folk are happy, I think we should make a start. I think there are any names left to staff who will probably come for the irrelevant papers. So, welcome to Amber. And I do appreciate the hard yards that have gone in the papers we're going to enjoy. A good, possibly relatively brief discussion today, although when you say the agenda is brief, it's almost a kiss of death, isn't it? But I understand also you've got 1 o'clock on forestry as well, which means you've got a pretty good inline. Look, let's start with the Karakia. Aubrey, if I could invite you to lead us, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Me inoi tātou, i te atua tēnei mātua ponunga e tuku whakamoemeti ati ki a koe i te mea. E te atua uhia mai tō koro ai manake, tō koro ai aroha ki runga i a rātou, te hunga e noho māwiwi ana, rātou e noho ana i raro i te kapua pauri i tēnei wā e te atua koenei tā mātou inoi atu ki a koe. Hoki mai ki a tātou te hunga ora, arahina mai mātou i roto i a mātou mahi katoa. We ask that you bless us today. We ask that you bless those who are grieving and in a state of mourning across our region, that you wrap your warm, loving arms around them and help to guide them through this time. We also ask that coming back to what we have in front of us, please guide us with your grace, we say in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Aubrey. So just again, James, I said it was saying it to James, Dan, a lot of the papers are yours, but also other staff. I found this a very easy read, which is a good sign if you're a chair. And the information is superb to read, and I'm very grateful for the effort that's been put in it. I think actually, Nadine, an increasing quality of paper. So I just love to make certain that's known, and I do appreciate it. Do we have apologies? We've got Riet coming in at some... Oh, she's there. G'day, Riet. How are you? Good to see you. So thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Great. It's good that you're here. You're here for how long, Riet? The whole meeting?
So I'm going to shoot out just before 11, so I'll just disappear just before 11.
We'll be finished by 5 to 11. No.
Cool.
You know, as chair. We'll see how we go. Great to have you here. So perhaps we will just sustain an apology for part of the meeting for Riet. Is there anybody else that we're in here? I'm going to move that motion. Have a second. Thank you, Larry. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. That's carried. Any matters on the agenda you need to note your interests? OPX, I will just note a family interest with one of the matters coming up under a litigation report. Is one that I previously made, and it's one that doesn't actually ultimately affect my participation in the meeting, but I will. We have the minutes of our last meeting in front of us, and here we take them as true and correct. Do I have a seconder, please? Hear me? Are there any matters of correction tonight for this? Pretty much like the meeting I was in, which is great. I noticed Tim's online. I just did note on page 8 there was it's more a matter of information than anything else, where we say I was just trying to actually, there's some good words here, but I wasn't quite certain what they meant. I'm just trying to remind myself what it was. Strategic risk management. So this is about the roading network, and I think it says here, if current approaches continue, management remains largely reactive. Well, I understood that. Look, I'm sorry, Tim. There was a question there, but I can't actually read my notes properly. I might come back to you. It's not a problem. It's probably more my understanding than anything else, but we'll do that later. So I've got a motion that we take these as true and correct. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Brilliant. Okay. Oh, yes, there's another question there. Work program, Pauline, we've got it in front of us. All makes sense, I think. Is there anything you'd like to comment on at this stage, or James?
No, I think standard no other additional things there, but just a standard update of when things occurred.
You and I have just been talking about the timing, the annual report. It might have gone back a week, but we'll still do our 30 September meeting for presumed clearance and at least the update from Stu at that point as to where we're at. So we can figure that one out. That's good. And just one other question I had more broadly, just around internal audit and reporting coming through to the committee. I was just wondering, is there anything on the program that we should be seeing?
For you, yes, there will be. It's just the timing of some of the reports. So we have a program, a tax governance program, which is completed by PwC. The report and the audit has been completed, but the report wasn't available. It's just been in draft format. So by the next time you will see that, and I believe there's also a report, another audit one, which is the one from NCTA as well. So there are two separate ones, but the timing of it is not particularly in here. Yeah.
I also note, I think in probably some of your papers, Dan, that is mentioned about, you know, somewhat of the focus that you and indeed internal audit have had to have. So I'm just going to try and pick up at some stage where the program's at so that we can see a level of our formal internal assurance coming to the committee. That's great. There's nothing to move in terms of that. It's great, Dan, to have strategic risk management as the first agenda item when we are fully awake and coffee. So can I invite you to speak to the paper, please?
Yes, kia ora koutou. Thank you. Through your chair, I'll take this report as read. It's quite dense because a lot has happened in the last 3 months since we've met. There's this war going on that's caused a great amount of the fuel supply in the world to diminish, which has brought us into a live environment for testing our business continuity. The main outset of this report is just describing our residual risk environment, that is our control environment, and although there is increased pressure going on, there is no change to our residual risk environment this quarter. However, the operating signals when it comes to affordability is indicating we are moving into a more constrained environment. And this is reflected in the long-term planning process as it goes forward, where choices are going to have to be more constrained going forward. Right now, we have a CPI at 3.1%, and RBNZ is expecting a peak of 4.3% coming up. These are big pressures coming through, and then we're looking long-term, 2029, implementation of that rates capping. Those combined together give us a more constrained environment. With that, we look more and more to our critical services, which has been a focus the last 3 months as we've been doing field crisis planning, which is about maintaining our critical services per business continuity strategy. And I'll speak to that more in the deep dive. It's public excluded after this. I've got a full presentation to walk you guys through everything we've done in our priorities, maintenance strategy, and what's under the hood. So tighter choices on phasing service levels, debt, renewals, and recovery is the practical effect going forward. However, our residual risk environment hasn't changed despite that. I think one of the main signals for where we are at in our current operating environment is a sharp increase of petroleum up 18.6% and diesel up 42.6% in price from the national board prices, which has a direct effect on our operations, but not significant at this stage since things are tapering off, leveling off, and we do have some controls, but it is an active watch point. It's a pressure point. Does not affect our current sustainability, but as we move forward in this long-term planning phase, we do have to bear in mind where things are going. This is reflective in the appetite position table on page 21. So the previous tables are residual risk, again, our control environment, where nothing has materially changed. our appetite position, we have a trend increase of pressure in our financials area, and we have steady movement on our stakeholder relationships, particularly with iwi. And again, that is reflected in our treatment options actually being currently implemented, so bringing our partners at the table during our long-term planning, as well as featuring in our asset and activity management planning as well. Bear with me, it's a dense report. Business continuity, as I mentioned, was a big feature this last quarter. We had an external review done. Took all of April. Every single business unit went through a business impact analysis where we looked at the minimal viable services and recovery timeframes for every unit and every dependency that goes with it. Tested it, challenged assumptions. We are in the process of getting the final review documentation back for that, and with that we'll schedule a deep dive for September Audit and Risk to go over those results. In the interim, there's nothing that's been surprising come through, nothing to suggest that there's a deterioration or residual risk for business continuity, but it does identify some opportunities for us to embed more understanding at our manager and team leader level of their plans. Our executive team is quite aware and they're quite in tune with it, but it can be quite inconsistent depending on where in the work you go, and a lot of movement happens, so you've got to identify a strategy of how to tap into that. But we'll talk to that more thoroughly come September. And with that, the fuel crisis planning has been a live test on our business continuity management, and I guess that the theme is that we can do a controlled movement to protect critical services rather than a reactive, reactive situation to the situation unfolding. So I'll just leave it to that on the fuel crisis stuff until later. I've included at the end work programming appendix so you can see what I have scheduled over the next 3 years and when I want to get to certain reviews. It's adaptable based on different pressures and priorities popping up, specifically long-term planning that'll adjust strategic priorities, therefore strategic risks. But it gives you an indication on what I intend on focusing on and doing deeper dives into going forward. Obviously, business continuity is scheduled for September, but going into next calendar year, there's some good topics of opportunity, health and safety, especially given the review last time, people and capability, given it's been a little while since we've done that one. Those are all very pertinent ones to do. And then local infrastructure and asset management, I want to park until that local water stem well becomes implemented, but I'm happy to take any steer, and I'll just keep updating that every cycle so you guys can stay informed of what I'm working on. That's everything. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Dan. That's very comprehensive, and thank you. Reports which I found really easy to read and enjoyed for probably reasons. So we have questions at the stage for Dan on the paper. Yeah, Larry.
Yeah, just on page 19, our regional risk with an appetite, and we've got 3 with a no. One of them is treaty commitments, and we've been working hard with our iwi partners, with our LTP, and meeting Bloody Pro in recent times. So I'm just asking, what will it take to get that, us within our risk appetite for treaty commitments in particular?
Thank you, Chair. That's a great question, and that just hits the foundation of, what would entitle a shift in residual risk. And so just because something's happening doesn't mean we have a knee-jerk reaction and adjust our risk. I want to see our controls implemented and completed. I want to see us get through a process successfully, which provides assurance and evidence that we are working as good treaty partners, that we are embedding this into our systems, processes, and procedures. And so we are in the middle of implementing the treatments. We're a really good place. I would like to see that complete before we say our risk is reduced. I want to see how it comes through through the other side. So yes, we're in a good place. So in terms of signaling, this isn't one that's shooting up in a negative direction. This is one that I'm very much looking forward to reducing, and when that occurs, it will be ripe for us to do that residual risk assessment, a full one, as we promised a few years ago. The current strategic risk we have is very internally facing, systems, processes, procedures, to enable effective treaty partnership. Once that's done, once we drop that residual risk rating, then we'll do a full reassessment, and I think Council will be in a better position to have that discussion. Yep, does that answer?
Is it more of a governance level, or is it more BAU? Governance.
Yeah. Although the activity and asset management planning is how that trickles through in the operational sense. And so the long-term plan gets adopted, the AMPs flow into that, that's an upward thing, and then they get monitored going down. And so that's an assurance evidence that is going forth. Those are being done, those are being worked on. They haven't been approved yet. I want to wait till they're approved. And
thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to ask the same question. And, as a governor, it feels like we keep failing this exam. We never get to see the results, so we never know where to improve when it comes to treaty commitments. And like Larry, I feel we've made some good ground in the last month or two, and yet we're still failing. Frustrating. It'd be nice to see a pathway, a described pathway forward, so we know what to do. My other question was going to be on reputational risk, which I thought came up at the last meeting, and I wasn't comfortable with our setting in reputational risk, and there was a bit of a discussion around it. Are we going to do any investigation into that level of risk? Question?
Through you, Chair. For our reputational risk, I do remember that conversation, and we did land on the fact that how we measure that risk is probably best set for a wider governance conversation. And so we've scheduled for the 5th of August the risk appetite workshop, PricewaterhouseCoopers, to go through that to see where we sit. Reputation can be incredibly subjective in how we measure. And so in this last cycle, we've split it out into almost 3 categories. So that's our stakeholder relationships, that's our reputational, and that's externally driven change, whereas before is kind of amalgamated before. I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but what I'm trying to indicate is I think it's something that we go through that workshop on, and then I'll have a better steer on what appetite we want to work through, and then we'd have a more common baseline of what the signals are underlying council that influence the reputational risk. At the end of the day, risk shouldn't be moving wildly all the time. That would indicate a flawed control environment. And so the fact that things aren't moving materially every quarter is a positive sign. It's also meaning I'm not going to adjust something just because we've got a bit of good press and process. I want an established process. Yeah, and I'll leave that there. Happy to take a follow-on question for more to that.
Thank you, Colin.
Rob, thank you, question.
Yeah, mine's actually on that too, on the treaty commitments. I actually think it would be a really good thing for all of us, probably especially me, to actually have a workshop run by an independent person to actually understand what are council's actual commitments, because we've got treaty commitments with the Crown, and understanding what are our treaty commitments, where's the overlap. I think this would be good because in every single thing we do, every paper that comes to us, we've got, iwi consultation and so on. But I think it's a two-way thing here. You know, are we overloading our iwi partners as well with stuff that, you know, I think can be covered as part of the community, whereas we want them to have the resources to be able to give the time to the things that actually really matter to them. So I think understanding what are our actual, you know, we read it here, but actually understanding what they are, I think would be good for the whole council. Just an observation.
Sorry, Aubrey.
Kia ora. I just want to acknowledge that I agree with the conservative approach that has been taken to treaty commitments, but I also want to acknowledge that we have had some really good meetings, and so I'm actually happy with the trajectory, knowing that we are making moves, LTP and iwi engagement and governance meetings, that we are on a trajectory out of that space, but I do acknowledge that it is quite early in those conversations to actually be able to shift that risk right now. So in saying that, I'd like to move the paper. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Aubrey. Chair. That's very helpful. Any other questions? I think, sorry, Debbie?
Wanted to ask a question regarding the risk appetite workshop in August. Is that the whole of council that will be there to look at that, or is that just this committee, whole council?
Yes, it's following the Finance and Performance Committee meeting, which everybody should be at. Yep.
Thanks, Debbie. Would it be very ideal that the whole council were the guardians on behalf of them about risk?
And through Chair, I believe you'll be there as well.
What day?
We'll come back to
The answer is I would love to be here. It's my best to be here. I'm not certain I've got the date in the calendar, which might be my fault. Riet, would you, I think you've got a contribution, please.
Yes, I just want to go back to Rob's comments on treaty partnership, and I do want to acknowledge that we have really tried and has done a lot, but I agree with the notes on page 19, as well as what Rob said. Sometimes we talk in the paper about partner capacity as well, and a relationship is a two-way dance. So I do wonder if we also need to do a sense check on what level of interaction. I think what we struck with our LTP workshops was absolute gold, where people wanted to contribute, and it felt, aside from the mahi we did, it also helped with our relationships. But I do want to say to councillors, the fact that it's an orange residual risk at this stage, to me, it doesn't reflect on lack of trying from our side, or even lack of trying from the other, the iwi side. There's a lot going on. If you take a look at the notes with all the reforms and the recovery, and then also again going back to our partner capacity, I don't see this as a reflection that we are not trying, or that our iwi partners are not trying. It is like any relationship. Sometimes it's a little bit good, sometimes it's a little bit bad, but what we want to signal to our iwi partners is that we are committed to a long-term relationship, and that takes some time. So I do recognise that it is orange, but I also want to lean into what Aubrey said, is that we have really tried to make headway, but again, it is a two-way dance. That's it from me.
Thank you, Riet. To clear that out, I was interested, perhaps I was looking Colin's way about sort of when. I take it from the perspective of affirmation that we, you know, from to use risk words, our control, that we will be at the end of the LTP cycle. Is that right?
That's correct. Primarily for me, what I'm focusing on is those AMPs, and I want to ensure that what does get put in those gets reviewed and approved, because that does operationalize our treaty commitments. It does note where we do have relationship agreements, who owns them, pathway for that, and that becomes monitorable. That's when my comfort will certainly increase in that, and evidence that we do have something on paper documenting our path forward on that in our long-term plan, because that will go into it. In the appetite table on page 21 at the bottom, stakeholder relationships. So That's one of our new categories, so iwi hapu whānau is one of those main three in there. Just noting in there that there is a regulatory reform load, and that's my veiled acknowledgement that, and from Gene as well. I don't know if he's here to speak to that, but there is a lot going on with our partners. They are dealing with a lot, and when we do review the risk and how we go about that, that'll be a part of it, is that engagement, how to ensure it's more manageable and efficient to enable better treaty partnerships.
I just think, Dan, if you have heard from the committee, there is potentially, without making this report bigger than Ben-Hur, for some of these things, to the extent that I totally accept your point, you need to see the evidence that the control is actually there might be some time boundness that we can put into some of these to say we're doing the right stuff, we're on a good track. That's what I've heard today, which is tremendous. And we, you're looking to, at whatever take in the coming sort of 6 months, to know that we've got that nailed, which would be good. Any other questions for Dan, you guys? Yeah, Rob.
Oh, sorry, just back to page 19. Just on the Colin's comment around reputation. Just on the graph there on page 19 around the infrastructure and asset management, there's a paragraph in the bottom there that says delivery appetite category is now outside comfortable appetite because of service level reductions and deferrals are becoming more likely as a management response to protect critical lifelines. I just think when we say something like the comms around that need to be a bit more. People just think they're not getting something, or we're going to do, our service level is going to be reduced. That is a negative if it comes back. I think if it can be explained, it's until we can, until we can afford to do it or whatever. That's the reason why it's being done. We're not actually just dropping the service level. So I just, the comms around it, people pick up on things.
Comment, Rob? What about just pick that up? Daniel, not so much the comment, but listening to the heat map. The heat map quite well depicts comfort, inside or outside appetite, and obviously there are the three biggies, and we discussed one of those. Why is asset management and real recovery on the outside of the line, when in fact under the table above we say we are in effect consistent with appetite?
Sorry, those, through your chair, and those are just hovering the line just to keep.
They're on the line with the
formatting
pressure going.
With asset management, as we've discussed in the last two papers as well, it is technically at a moderate residual risk, but there are elements of it that are obviously not comfortable. So again, I'm happier for that one to be more on the outside of the line part, because it is something that we need to watch.
Gabrielle, recovery? What's trending it towards being on the outside, right?
I've got nothing there trending it on the outside in terms of residual risk. It is an active watch point at the moment for our recovery contracts through the fuel escalations. Most of those are coming through there. And so there is pressure, but given that we're at the tail end of that, probably worth considering whether or not that's strategic risk when we go to our workshop.
Great, okay, thank you. Just out of interest, I was interested in the natural environment one. Do you have any fast track applications inside the district?
Inside the district?
Yeah, well,
we do not.
the thing is, but
district council does not, but there is one that we are aware of.
Yeah. I mean, fast track. I'm sorry, that almost sounds like a political statement. I don't mean it. Fast track isn't bad per se, but I was just thinking about some of the descriptions about our desires for the natural environment, and sometimes, and I stress sometimes, fast tracking seems to be to some extent counter to our aspirations around the natural environment. So that's the reason I asked that question. Brilliant. Hey, and Daniel, perhaps just a question of throughput. Is there a 30-second take on what a first principle review is of a risk?
Yeah, it's just a deeper version of the review, cutting back to ground zero on it. So blue sky thinking, whereas what I'm calling strategic risk review is more paper-based review. So we're dealing with what's already in front of us rather than picking apart. It does depend on the amount of resourcing that goes into scoping it. So if we're doing a treaty commitment ones from scratch, I'd be wanting to do more scoping inside of what that review looks like, who needs to be involved and everything, whereas a strategic risk review would predominantly be with the risk owner themselves, sitting down at a table with a piece of paper. That's what it would practically look like, and so it wouldn't get as in-depth and as resource intensive. Natural environment one was one that we did that was first principles, and it took a lot of workshops, took a lot of polling, because it touches every single point of the situation in very different ways, and there's a lot of that ideas that go in the back of where that is, and there's tons of data points across the organization. What is a leading indicator that fits in that environmental space, what isn't, needed to be sifted through as well. So it just is a lot more dense in capacity to get to the right risk assessment.
Thank you for that. I feel like we've probably got through it. I think the key thing is even if we go back to particularly that table which we're focused on page 19 and 20, and actually the risk appetite on that further over. The issue is that there is pressure on the system. We haven't spoken about all those pressures, but I think it's really important to just note that the pressure comes not just on one matter, but it's all related. So, financial pressure affects your asset management, reflects other matters as well, which are coming through here. Reform, rates capping, you name it, it's all tending to concentrate around these big risks. So thank you for capturing, that's good. Aubrey's moved this. Do I have a seconder for this paper that we noted? Thank you, Rob. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that, Dan. It's a very insightful report. Can we move on to compliance monitoring and enforcement metrics, please? G'day.
So
Gary, if I'm going below, Gary, I'll interview for my apologies. Nice to see you here.
nice to meet you. Through the chair, I'll just give a brief overview of the report and then I'll take some questions. So the CME metrics report, it's an annual report that's provided by the Compliance and Enforcement Special Interest Group, which is part of Te Uru Kahika. The intention of the report is to provide a national overview of the compliance and enforcement activity across regions and unitary councils. And it's used to help identify any emerging trends, challenges and opportunities for improvement. In context with Gisborne, as we all know, Tairāwhiti operates in one of New Zealand's highest risk environmental settings, erosion-prone land, intensive forestry activity, severe weather events and sensitive receiving environments. The CME metric report recognises Gisborne District Council's willingness to use stronger enforcement tools, including enforcement orders when significant environmental risks exist and urgent intervention is required. Council's compliance approach is focused on achieving environmental outcomes and remediation rather than relying solely on punitive enforcement. We're finding at Council that stronger regulatory action is encouraging earlier engagement, improved compliance behaviour. The report itself highlights that the complaint volumes increased by approximately 30% that year, yet the compliance team still responded to 90% of those complaints received. It also identifies that complex investigations, forestry monitoring, legal proceedings and remediation oversight require significant specialist capability and resources. And I just want to highlight on page 22 of the CME metrics report, the report 78% from Gisborne District Council is classified as other. That compliance category primarily reflects classification due to system limitations, rather than a meaningful compliance trend. Don't want that to be interpreted as any poor compliance behaviour. Key messages I would say from the report is, I believe the CME metrics report shows that Council is taking a proactive, risk-based approach to managing increased complex environmental risks while aligning with the national practice. And I just want to say, moving forward with the report, the Seaside Group is looking at how we can format the report to look better, because the current feedback we're getting is that it's very hard to sort of get that regional context from the report. So we're just currently identifying how we can improve in that space. But yeah, happy to take questions.
Thank you. I appreciate the report. So I always find this an encouraging time each year to see this report and understand what's going on. Do you have questions at all for Gary here? Yes, Rob.
You're just on page 40.17. Just when you talk about complaints, 376 complaints relating to over 8,000 active consents. Who are those complaints coming? Are they coming from the public?
Yeah, I'll be public.
The public are complaining about something that's happening.
Yes.
As part of a consent.
Yeah. It can be. It's not necessarily just related to a consent. It could be a complaint relating to any issue that we feel relates to compliance.
One a day, including the weekends, so it's quite a number. I mean, I'm not suggesting we're wrong here, but I mean it's quite a load for your team, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, those complaints could range from somebody having a fence too high next door to something more serious.
Yeah.
It's across the board, really.
Thank you. Yes, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions, but starting on page 67. 67 and other grading on that graph. 78% breakdown of consents in different categories, compliance per monitoring event. And we have got a massive 78% in other grading. I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, that's why I highlighted that just before, saying that that's due to when we collect the data, the systems that we're using to collect that data has a limitation, so we're unable to give it a classification. So rather than just keep 78% of the monitoring we do out of the report, we wanted to include that, but we could only put that down as other, because the system wouldn't allow us to classify what type it was. So it's not that it's outside of what we're reporting on. It's just there is 78% of the work that we're doing. The systems, when it came to collating the information, were unable to ascertain what that actual data was.
I'm sorry, you need to speak up for me, I'm quite deaf. My next question is on page 63 and relates to Gisborne District Council and how it's at 60 and 47% on the number of monitored consents, and this was back in 1921 and 22. So this little indicator, for me, suggests something. And there's lots of suggestions in the graphs throughout that I'd like to see analysed by someone who can make sense of why is Gisborne such an outlier in many of the graph shapes. Going through them, I'd probably take too long to do it now, but in numerous areas, that's one, which I interpret, okay, back in 21, we were not monitoring sufficiently. And as a result, we have ended up with a forestry issue. When you look at some of the other graphs, another one, just if you compare the shape of the graphs through the years with other unitary authorities, Gisborne is often an outlier. And I think we could learn something from that if we sat down and analysed why and where. I've also highlighted page 85 for something. 1 minute. Yes, and again, the Gisborne District Council on page 85, you see the other councils have mostly got sort of flat bars. There's nothing, they're in and out. But Gisborne District Council has got a definite angled bar. So angling, increasing, going from 39 to 144 actions and warnings. So over the last few years, we have severely increased our actions and warnings, which again, I'm suggesting that it's implying that we weren't doing enough early enough.
If I, through the Chair, if I can go back to your comment around the monitoring figures. So what we find in Gisborne is our monitoring figures, or monitoring of consent figures.
Sorry, can you just up your level?
What we find in Gisborne is our level of consents that we monitor are lower, can be lower than other areas. But the reason for that is our staff have combined roles. They're not just monitoring officers, they're enforcement officers as well. So if you have an officer that's tasked with doing monitoring, with the current risks that we've got here at Council in regards to forestry, a lot of our time is then taken from what should be their day-to-day role of monitoring resource consents. They're then having to focus their time on the higher level enforcement.
Through the Chair, by way of further explanation, it's quite a blunt tool assessment, right? Like if we had 1,000 consents and 50% of them were with forestry, high-risk consents, that's where we concentrate our resources. So the other 50% might be on low-level consents. So these figures, if you want 100% us monitoring every single resource consent, what you're actually saying is you're prepared for officers to go out and look at a low-risk consent. That's how you achieve those numbers. So I think the reflection in the statistics are probably more associated with our risk profile around the types of consents that we are monitoring as distinct from other consents in other regions that don't have the same risk profile. Does that make some sense? So we have a lot of high risk consents because of our forestry related environment and our environment really. We can certainly, this is about resource. If you want to see us track towards 100 and look at every single consent from the lowest risk one to the highest risk one, we'll provide the people, provide the resource, we'll get it done. Our reality, and this is what I always say about consents, is we do not send our fire engines to every smoking chimney. We send them to the ones that are on fire. So the stats that you see here are a reflection of us doing just that.
Can I just add on to that? I think that what the report highlights is that we are exemplar or outstanding in terms of our practice around in the forestry space, and as James has said, that is one of the most complex areas, and Gisborne has probably one of the most complex environmental areas that we have to monitor and manage as well, so the stats reflect that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, in the summary of the report, one of the paragraphs that I think is really valuable to hone in on is that, and Gary's said it in this way, this is not a report that compares apples with apples. We don't have the same baseline or the same environment. If everyone had the same environment with us and we were comparing each other with one another, you'd find a lot of value in a report like this. Really, but I still think there's value in it. I'm not anti this report at all because I think we need more of this sort of report so that we can see what the resourcing levels are and what sort of environments we're dealing with and best practice, etc. But I do think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we're all quite different. We have different risk profiles, different types of I guess, risk associated with the consents that we're looking after, and we're a bit of a standout, particularly with forestry. No one's dealing with the level of forestry and environmental risk associated with forestry like us. We are unique in that context. And there are other councils, we don't have as much dairy as Waikato, you know, so it's quite different, yeah.
And I think, sorry, if I can just add to that as well, when you look at the table for the monitoring figures by each year, whenever we've had a significant event in Gisborne, you'll see the monitoring figures go down, and that's because we're in that reactive space and the team's focus then go from monitoring consents to being reactive in that, monitoring of the high risk activities, which is your forestry.
Another point I'd like to make is that, and I guess it's because of our state, is that we have nearly double the number of consent staff per 1,000 people that other regions. Nearly double through the region. So are we overstaffed, question mark, or are we doing the job better, question mark? And I get back to the forestry industry because it is under severe pressure in this region. And will anyone in the council acknowledge the fact that we may have been monitoring insufficiently back in the 2021 years, and that it was partially the council's fault for the damage resulting from poor monitoring in those years? And you can see the reaction we have had through coming through to now monitoring severely. And my question and my worry is that we have swung that pendulum too far.
I think you have a comment you'd like to have.
I just don't think it's within the context of the report, the line of questioning.
Yeah, sorry,
Council
I
is
do
raising.
tend to venture out of that, don't I?
I think I was interested, Gary, and I think it does go back to 144 with the risk-based proactive approach that you are taking and the increased use of enforcement orders. And I think we're going to have a broader debate on forestry this afternoon, actually. But it struck me as valuable that in fact that approach was being taken. So I was going to say, well done. I think there have been any number of reports, Colin, in the past about past matters, so I don't think it is open for debate this morning as well. So thank you for that, Nadine. Do we have any other questions? Yes, Jeremy.
Yeah, Gary, I'd just like to understand a little bit more about this. The system classification limitations and reporting. It seems astonishing that we have 78% of monitoring events classified as other. So those are limitations in our system.
Yes.
And are we working to resolve that, or?
Yeah, it's kind of going back to our old school way of manually recording data so that we can have an improved figure for the next report, which we're starting to look at just now. The system that we're operating from just now just doesn't have that capability to categorise it how we need for this report. So it's now down to staff just individually taking it over.
Yeah, and just
which is not great.
And just in addition to that, you'll be aware that we have our Enterprise Solutions project, which is our ERP system change out, moving from Ozone to Tech 1 and moving from Objective to Tech 1. So part of that process is to deal with issues like this, where we've got legacy systems that don't have the necessary functionality to deal with our requirements around reporting and capturing data, and it's difficult to get changes in those systems because they are quite archaic, hence why we are doing the move. So you'll see things like this in pockets across council. All the more reason for us to move to a system that's actually capable of capturing and utilising our data to our benefit, particularly in terms of forward planning for the region. So the compliance monitoring and enforcement space is a part of that. It will be one of the modules. Our key focus at the moment, not to digress too much, is incidentally on the consenting stuff. So we do want to make sure that system goes first. So we have a philosophy and a direction actually to make sure we get the consent module in, and that'll set the context for the work that comes with the compliance monitoring and enforcement part of the system as well after, so function follows form, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Colin?
Just one quick question. Is this the first time we've had this report? Or have I forgotten seeing it before?
No, we have had it in the past. Yeah.
I don't know if it would have been last year, but it would have.
No, it would have been the year
last couple of years.
before,
How often is this done through TUK, is it?
Every 2 years, isn't it?
Every 2 years. Probably a couple of years ago.
It's an annual report.
Done every 2 years.
Something like that. Okay, I think we exhausted the questions on here, probably exhausted Gary as well.
So just on that comment, incidentally, Colin, what's great about these reports is that they capture the years previous as well. So you can see how well we have been tracking through the period that you've received the report. So you don't need to go and dig up previous reports because this is an ongoing commentary and data set year on year. Cheers.
Thank you for that. I think we are there. We're in a second to receive this report. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jeremy. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Appreciate that, Gary. Righty, if we can move on to health and safety, please. That would be absolutely wonderful.
Karakia.
Phil, how are you? I was looking at an old face down the front of the table there, Phil. It might be you rather than...
This is transition in action.
I know, I realise it's transition and information in front of my eyes. It's great. Phil, welcome to the meeting. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. So just as a quick update here, I'll take the report as read, but it's just coming through our transition period, our handover with David in the back there. So moving into the senior in health and safety. We're making steady progress through strengthening our council manages our critical risks, and we've got a clear focus through improving our governance oversight, our accountability, and embedding that consistent risk management practices across all of our activities. And also working through sort of better visibility of our highest risks and having more structured reporting and leadership through elected members and our leadership team. We're progressing our sort of targeted improvement actions where gaps were identified through our impact report that was provided, particularly around our controls, monitoring and assurance. Whilst it's an ongoing program of work, the foundations are in place and our focus shifting from establishing our frameworks to beginning to demonstrate our effectiveness, ensuring our controls are consistently applied in our day-to-day operations to keep our people, contractors and community safe. It is a work in progress and an evolving landscape. Reporting templates can be sort of modified to suit. I think we sort of talked about that before, making sure that we can have our reporting through that is consistent and applied. I think that's kind of my snapshot of that.
And if I could just make a couple of points. You'll notice that we've got the attachment in here. So last time we met, we had some discussion on the Safe Plus report, and we committed to doing a reporting framework for that. I want to draw members to that part of the report, because this is the first iteration. Welcome any and all feedback, because it is an iterative process, but if you feel like there's anything more you think that should be in that reporting, please let us know, and we'll do our best to accommodate. If you're happy with it in its current form, that is the form that it will take into the future. So it will be a standing item on this report going forward. So that's the attachment to the report. I also just want to highlight, and it's mentioned in the report, you'll be aware that we've been going through quite a lot of vendor system change with our health and safety system. So we had Vault, that then became Dampstra, that then became IDGen, and IDGen Workforce, and we've recently been advised of a potential another change in the system front. So it's been quite, I'm going to use the word tumultuous. We've managed our way through it because the system in its foundation is largely kind of the same, but it does get a bit worrying when it's a bit unsettled. We are part of a larger conglomerate in the form of Botplas, and we join with them for the system, so they're helping us manage that change. So there will be some joined up work between health and safety and our IT area and system people. It's just something that, I mean, Vault's been around, and I can't understand, to be fair, why in the last, I want to say 2 years, Dave, there's been quite significant change of hands and stuff, so there's a lot happening in that technology space. We are contemplating a potential move to another system if it comes to that point. I just find it a bit unsettling when it's changing.
Thanks for that, because I might want to come back to that point, James, because you must have seen my questions. In fact, do we have questions for either Phil or James, or indeed David? Good to see you back, David, on this report, please. If I could start with that, James. I did have a question, what was IDGen Workforce, and you just explained it. It does, I think my concern here, and this is probably a statement rather than a question, but you might want to reflect on this, is that as we have, and I say this generally, but also here at Gisborne, as we have moved into encouraging good health and safety practice, one of those is a system that enables us to readily recall, but actually really enable staff to readily engage with health and safety. is this getting, your tumultuousness, let's go with that word,
Yeah.
the change, the constant change, is that impeding our figures here? Are we trying to put engagement from the start?
Probably a little bit dramatic on my part. But no. So can our people report? Absolutely. Is the system working in that way? Absolutely. Can we draw data out of it? Yes. Sometimes a little bit painfully. I guess I just don't like it being quite unsettled. It has been like I'm starting to forget the name of the product. And that's just an honest reflection. It has been solid vault for decades. and yeah, so I mean, we're making sure that the powers that be in that space understand, and we've got options. Some of those options might require more work than others. I'm happy to stay the course for now, but it is a live conversation for the health and safety team and our technology people. We are revisiting a discussion around the Tech One, so you've got an all-in-one system. There are some benefits. It might be a little bit light, I think, initially we thought around the reporting, but work's being done. I'm just highlighting it because we bring these reports and I feel like the name changes when we put the system in. Report to report, we're meeting quarterly, and I sometimes, like, if you go back through the report, you're like, what system are we talking about now? I feel like that. I have to go through and make sure it's all the same thing and up to date.
And there is a hidden cost to continual change. Phil, I've always, I don't know, my current bent at the moment, so you've seen inside my head is particularly how we're working with contractors. And I think, as you quite rightly point out in the paper, the critical risks tend to come not solely with contractors, clearly, but actually they can influence substantial numbers. And I was interested, as you quite rightly noted on 137, that large woody debris and Fossil have been high risk. Well, yes, they are high risk areas. When do those programs come to an end? That might be a question for somebody else rather than you, Phil, but when do they come to an end?
The recovery program.
Yes, the large woody debris program, for which there are...
Next year?
Next year?
Yeah, sometime next. The large woody debris program is like June 2027, and then the eroding ones carry on a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
And we've got our flood control, which carries on a bit longer than that, so about 28.
Yeah, Fossil raising the houses, that was the other one.
That's done.
Done? Yeah.
Ish with maybe a 3-month extension.
Good. Ish, good. Yeah, okay. No, that's fine. I'm just interested because, I mean, I appreciate, if we're thinking risk-based where the focus is, I was just wondering, out of interest, how long that was going for.
And just for committee members' comfort, we have a specific health and safety person that's dedicated solely to recovery and recovery works, and a health and safety focus.
Phil, I have just completed a code of conduct review, not here. Elsewhere, where I describe the actions of a person as being aggressive and abusive. What interested me was on page 141, where we've got the rolling 12-month, the rolling 12-month on events. I noticed under members of the public we had injury. Now, sorry, I'm making some assumptions this could be aggressive, but it may be something different. Is that in the current quarter, or is that just somewhere in the last 12 months? I was just trying to remember what that injury with the public might have entailed. There's 3 of them.
I believe that's rolling 12 months. I don't think that's...
So it's not current yet.
It's not
so
current.
It's nothing that's drawn us up too much. So look, you mentioned the reporting in the appendix on the health and safety and wellbeing plan. I do appreciate that. It's good to see this. I think the one, well, perhaps just ask a question first. Is this organised as a project? I mean, you've got a plan. How do you internally govern that the plan is being delivered?
Yeah, so the team are running it as a project. It follows the principles of a project, I guess you could say, and we do have a project management framework in the organisation. So I guess the answer to that, maybe not in the same way that we deal with major projects, but the Enterprise Solution project is full Monty governance, steering group, all the bells and whistles. this may not meet that threshold for that level of oversight. I guess in a sense you are operating as the pseudo-governance team for this project. This is where the reporting comes, this is where the planning is. Yeah. So, other projects that we have don't come through this environment. So I've got a level of comfort with your guys' oversight as governors and working with the team that it's managed in the way that a project is managed with the appropriate oversights, but probably doesn't hold that we would have for other projects. There's not a truckload of money going into this. There will be some money spent. So there's a whole lot of factors that would put it into that category, but it's not.
I appreciate that, James. And so, my information needs is at one level, because my ultimate question is, are there any impediments to completing the program? So what I'm trying to say here is, if I was looking at this as a program, I'd be saying, what does the risk register look like in terms of completing that? Now, I accept that we're doing this on perhaps a download. I don't mean that as a negative sense. So I'd ask the general question, because it will be one that you will hear from me as long as you bring this to me. Are there any impediments to actually completing what actually is a really important program if you think about what we're doing with health and safety?
I think currently we're tracking okay. Could be a bit better in a couple of areas, but I do feel like if you look at that report, you'll see that there is an update required. That particular piece of it requires that other pieces fall into place first. Yeah. Our biggest impediment, and what worries me, and I'm happy to share this, is health and safety is a proactive work program. They can be quite reactive as well when something happens. If we have another weather event that requires the resource here to be redeployed to other higher priorities, you're going to see some changes in time frame. Because I can't make all those things happen at once. So those we've had that before. So that worries me a little bit. But largely now, we're, as you can see from the reporting, we're heading in the right direction. Keeping a close watch on the system stuff that I talked about earlier. If something goes haywire in that space, I will tell you about it and it will have an impact. So those are probably the two key things. I think our resourcing is all right. It does require a lot of buy-in from the organisation. We can't do this alone, so that's where we're concentrating our efforts. But teams are responding really well to a number of the key actions that they are involved in, making sure. So we had some critique through that audit around our hazards and needing to review those. So we're seeing some good traction in that space. Again, that requires a good system. Yeah. My response is, I think we're okay.
We'll monitor on that basis, and I mean, naturally, as governors, we then also focus on deadlines and bits and bobs so that we nail it. But that's Phil, the sorts of areas that if we're going to monitor, I'd be looking for a wee bit more around what is the project associated with completing, what is the meritorious objectives outlined in that plan. So that's good. I'll go on that basis.
Just through you, the chair, I think just to add to what James said, I totally agree that while staffing, resource, and a weather event or something that goes to the left, there's going to be an impact. To acknowledge that our teams here have come to the party and are actually, being that support mechanism. So without them actually doing those things, it's going to be tricky. But we have had a lot of backing from our teams.
Thanks, Phil. It's interesting, isn't it? It's a wee bit of a theme today because we've had it from Daniel, we've had it from Gary, we've got it from you as well. The total disruption of a weather event, and indeed even my question, where we're going. That's really important from a strategic risk perspective. We can't beat ourselves up when we face those, but it can have a significant impact on actually just doing BAU. Debbie, have you got your hand up?
I have.
So I'm going to Debbie and then go Roll. You're going to go Jeremy, I think. That's the way it's going.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand what the illness on page 141, when we're looking at the incidents, business type, and event type. I just don't understand what illness is part of it. And also it's really worrying, the library is always so huge.
So this is going to be, you're talking about the aquatics operations?
Yes. What? I just don't understand why that's.
I don't actually know off the top of my head. I have to go back and have a look on that one. Sorry.
Dave, you don't?
Yeah, I think it was a medical event experienced by a member of the public while they were in the pool, having to be evacuated from the pool, having a medical event that was already pre-acknowledged. So it was a pre-existing medical event where they passed out while they were in the pool doing exercises. So that's
I see.
as an illness rather than an injury, to specifically differentiate it from those injuries. That's what I believe it was. I can look it up now, but that's what I believe it was.
And your observations around the library are absolutely correct. It is a hotbed for incidences. Yeah, we've actually just working with the library to do some more de-escalation training and personal safety training as well. So the team are working closely with our livable community. But it's an area where and not too dissimilar to any other councils in the country. Where it's at in terms of public.
We've also, we've also looked at different options around security guards for the library as well. That's a cost. So then we started looking at, do you have staff members that were also trained as security guards? So we've been looking through some of those options as well.
That's a live conversation and part of the ongoing work that your team are doing with livable communities with a focus on the library.
It's cold comfort, Debbie, but these stats mirror what I see elsewhere in the country.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Your library and your swimming pool are a challenge. Yeah. So I think it was you, Rob, and then Jeremy.
Yeah, just on that, and like the aquatic, I understand the aquatic operations. I presume the incidents, a lot of those would be slips and where there's no injury caused, or is it the actual abuse side of it quite high there as well?
It'll be a mix.
Just on the library, I'm wondering, like, putting security guards or whatever, that's all another cost to run, which we get hammered for. But we've got technology now. I'm just wondering whether you've got face recognition. You know, if people have repeatedly, then can we just have something? Are we putting enough, helping enough there with protecting our staff? By these people, it's a privilege to have a facility like the library and go and use. If they're not willing to behave themselves, then they're banned.
How do we do that? We have trespass people from the library.
Probably the most trespass location on our list.
And a lot of them are known to our library staff as well.
Free Wi-Fi.
So Jeremy, you got a question, and then Larry.
I'd say the other thing with the library is it's the only free public space that people can go to inside. Tracks that sort of free Wi-Fi. Just on the on page 137, the point 18, there's a bit there about the senior leadership team's commitment to health and safety, representative meetings and reading minutes and things. Now I read later that there's one director, has to be at least one director at each health and safety meeting. I assume that you're pretty much always going there.
It's a mix. I generally try to get along. It's a really well attended meeting. It's probably the most representative body of our organisation because we don't just have hubs represented, we have functions and locations represented. We're going to have to probably move it to the chambers soon. But yeah, no, Nadine goes, I go, other directors go. But yeah, we play part of it.
Yeah, cool.
I was at the last one, maybe the one before that. Nadine was at the one before that. I think one before that, and I was at the one before that.
Jeremy? Larry?
Yeah, just a question. Where does the CBD and the environment of that, what category does that come under? Was it be monitoring and compliance or livable spaces, or, because I know there's a lot of incidents that happen in the CBD and I'm not kind of seeing it here and reflect of it, and I would be quite interested to have it as a standalone item so we could monitor that a bit more, because there's an area of concern with our parking meter people, for instance, and yeah, just general disruption.
Yeah.
So through you, the Chair, the CBD, like the parking wardens and things like that, they come under the monitoring compliance.
Monitoring and compliance.
Yeah, so it's all down to function in these reporting units.
Okay.
So if it was a gardens person in the CBD while they're doing the median strips, then that would come under the communities,
right,
community recreation.
And what other areas does that come under then? So because if I see 9 incidents, is that just mainly the CBD, or is there other environments that are taken into that monitoring and compliance area?
So that monitoring compliance area would cover all of the monitoring compliance teams. That would be working through to
Animal control,
the whole thing. Yeah. Is it not really an issue to be able to have it on a standalone CBD environment? Because I just hear it all the time of people getting abused, and whether our monitoring teams see it or not, but it's a common occurrence. I hear it every day almost.
There's an important distinction there. So this is about our staff, our work sites and our functions. If there's an incident between members of the public and we have a staff member involved, it'll get reported. If it's just out there, not part of us, we'll never capture that in this reporting.
And same with the Māori wardens? Are they
no, Māori wardens, they report in here. We so they're a contracted service and they have access to our system, so they come through the monitoring and compliance. Probably quite similar to the reporting that we get from parking wardens. So they sit, that team works very closely together, and they use the same system. Everyone uses
the other area would be Freedom Camping area.
I know Michelle Lexman, she's in here too. She is an avid reporter of anything in that space.
And that's under level monitoring and compliance.
Thank you. Aubrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just really got a question out of interest in terms of wellbeing and health and safety of our contractors. Do councillors fall into that category? I'm not sure how it's just a question of interest. So councillors as a contractor to the council, does the council also monitor health and wellbeing of councillors? Just the interest question.
It'll be off the radar.
I know that councillors have access to our wellbeing related services like TELUS Health, for example. They're our employee assistance program and provide a number of wellbeing related services. So in that yes, if you have an incident, you can report. I know there's quite a bit of work done by partner organisations around councillor safety and public interface stuff. I think there's a growing concern around elected members and people sitting in decision-making capacities in terms of public safety. I think we're part of the team.
Thank you, Chair. I think what Aubrey was asking is, have we got access to the in-house masseur? A comment on page 138, and it's about the SHE, SHE assurance team, and just complimenting the team that we are facilitating SHE and helping to get these new contractors across the board, because from my roading point of hat on, that's a real benefit if we get more people SHE qualified. Jumping up to page 37, and it's got to do with compliance and health and safety. I think I'm right in saying that on the 1st of July, the new traffic management matched with risk standards are being implemented across the country. I know that we have implemented it a lot earlier, but I'm wondering, is it this compliance team that go out and make sure that the new conditions are being adhered to? No, not the same.
Not our compliance. I imagined it'll be, if there's any auditing and assessment in around that, in our rating team.
Under rating. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, we've had a pretty good debate. I think that's, unless there's any other burning question. Phil, thank you. And David, senior, you're still here? Thank you, and James, for your report. It's been very, very helpful. and insightful. And I hope one or two of those comments from us also provide a little bit of a lead as to future reporting.
Happy to
Thank you, Larry. Do I have a second to thank you, Debbie? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. And that gets us to the motion to move into public excluded. We've got the very